Hi, I'm James Headley. Welcome back to the Living in Naples channel. While there are a lot of negatives to Zillow, including but not limited to the wild inaccuracies in their estimates of home values, the site slash service does offer some benefits for prospective homebuyers and sellers at the macro level now and then. As one recent example, I recently read an article based on a Zillow survey of homebuyers that raised some interesting points. In today's video and my next one, I'm going to look at 8 psychological traps that buyers are susceptible to and provide some context related to the Southwest Florida real estate market as it stands today. Before tackling the first of those 4 today, let me thank you, as always, for tuning in, for subscribing, liking, and sharing. I appreciate that very much and certainly encourage you to continue to do so, so thanks for that. So turning to what those first 4 psychological traps for buyers as outlined by Zillow were. Number 1 was overconfidence. While this was the term Zillow used, I would actually reframe it as loving before you look. The idea is that you see a home online and or via a listing sent to you by your realtor, and you talk yourself into it being the right home for you before going to see it in person. And then when you do see it, you have already talked yourself into it to such an extent that you overlook or minimize the real issues that may be present in the home. If you find yourself at a showing saying things like, "That's an easy fix," or "That's really a minor issue," over and over and over again, you may have fallen into this overconfidence trap. So what advice would I give you to help you to avoid this trap as a buyer? In a nutshell, I would say work with an agent who provides you with a balanced perspective on homes of interest to you. In general, just about every home has some share of minuses to go with its pluses. You hope that you find one that has a lot more pluses and that the minuses are more minor. But as long as your agent is talking to you about the full scope and not only talking to you about those pluses in an effort to put their finger on the scale to get you to buy no matter what and sooner rather than later, you're going to be in a better position. So if that's the case and you're feeling like it's not, or it's that type of situation where the finger's on the scale, you may want to test the waters and check out a more balanced agent. Beyond that, I would say rely on experts, obviously, such as inspectors, and commit to seeing multiple homes before you find yourself committing emotionally to any single one. Brings us to number 2, and that's neglecting the future you. This one's pretty straightforward. Don't be a buyer who spends hundreds of thousands of dollars on a home that works perfectly for you in the here and now, but that won't fit your lifestyle in a few years. A couple of obvious scenarios here are couples buying a home before having kids that they quickly outgrow as their family expands, or at a later stage of life, which is certainly more our demographic that I work with in Southwest Florida, perhaps buying a 2-story home when mobility issues are on the near horizon that make those stairs a major obstacle. Beyond the obvious step of trying to envision your life in 5 to 7 years before buying a home, I would expand this farther to think about not just the home, but the community you're buying into. If you plan to be a snowbird now, but eventually spend considerably more time or even all your time in Southwest Florida, how does that impact how you look at the amenities in your community? Your commute to shopping, to dining, etc., and so on. So just keep that in mind as well. That brings us to number 3, and that's failing to negotiate. Again, pretty straightforward, right? So all I'll say here is that you might want to check out some other videos here on the channel related to pricing and to data, and also consider the background of the agent you are working with, since their perspective can mean tens, if not hundreds of thousands of dollars at the closing table to you. And that brings us to the last of the items we're going to talk about today, and that's number 4, which is acting impulsively. Well, I didn't say these were going to be earth-shattering reservations, right? Again, fairly straightforward. Seriously, though, it is good to say things out loud and together, even if they seem commonsensical. I would pair this with the first trap, particularly in situations where there is competition for a property. Thankfully, the market in Southwest Florida has cooled enough recently that we are closer to a balanced market than we were a couple years ago when there was a buyer frenzy, and certainly we were in about as extreme a seller's market as you can imagine. That said, there are still going to be homes out there with multiple offers. So, in those, and frankly, in all situations, you want to avoid an impulse offer by doing all of the homework in advance. Know your budget, including getting approved for a pre-approved for a mortgage if that's part of your plan. Have a good sense of the market comps and trends, and develop a comfort level with the agent or agents that you're going to work with well in advance of the point where you are thinking you might make an offer or potentially you may make an offer. So again, let's stop there for this episode. I'll pick up with the final 4 traps in my next episode and hope you'll tune in then. And of course, I'd love to hear from you in the interim so I can help you avoid these and other negatives in the home buying process. Until then, thanks again for liking, subscribing, and sharing.